what in the world? It like jolts the whole car and shakes everything, and you didn't see it coming. One time I was actually driving up Highway 205, and right on the edge of the lane there was a huge pothole. And have you ever drove over a pothole when you're going 65 miles an hour? Whoa. I went over that pothole, and I'm like, what in the world just happened? So I had to pull over the car and check, and actually my wheel was bent. My tire was still intact, but my wheel was bent, and so I had to drive it home and take it to the shop. They had to repair the things. But sometimes things happen, and you didn't expect it. You didn't see it coming. How about a broken pipe? Some of you guys will remember when we were in the building, there was a broken pipe that happened. And it's like 2 rooms were taken out. Ceiling tile was down. I mean, where did that come? Didn't see that coming. Cost a bunch of money. Sometimes your property taxes go up. That happened last year. I didn't expect that. I don't know if that's an Oregon thing, but I used to live in Washington State, and that never happened. And down here, it's like, whoa! Our mortgage looks a little different. Actually, I got the bill in the mail the other day for the new year, and it said due by November 15th. It freaked me out. But actually, no, that's wrapped into the mortgage, but it just had a little heart attack, a little short heart attack there. Things come out of nowhere. Sometimes an animal dies. We had that happen here recently. We have puppies in the house, and one of them passed away really quickly. And so sometimes life happens, and you didn't see it coming. You didn't see that speed bump coming. But sometimes it's more than just a speed bump. Sometimes this is like financial crisis. Sometimes it's a relational rupture. Sometimes it's a serious diagnosis. Sometimes tragedy strikes. And we're left wondering what we're going to do. And we have nowhere else to turn to but God. And you're like, God, even if you don't believe there is a God, you're like, God, if you're out there, you're going to have to help me here. You're going to have to help me. And then you turn to God, and He doesn't make it better. That's what our passage is about today in John chapter 11. When God keeps you in lockdown, this sermon, we've called this sermon, Lock It Down, right? Finalize your decision for Christ. But in order to do that, sometimes He puts you in lockdown so that you would lock it down on Him. Personal lockdown. So when you're in personal lockdown, I believe this passage, John chapter 11, will teach us 3 things. And they're this: how to deal with weight, how to deal with the weight, how to cope with the loss, and then how to let Jesus do His thing. So I want to entitle this message, Dying to Live. Dying to Live. So we got 44 verses to cover today, and we're going to take this one section at a time. And when Jesus has you in personal lockdown, how do you deal with the weight? Because sometimes it takes a really long time. So let's start with verse 1. John chapter 11, verse 1. Now a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. It was Mary who anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped His feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was ill. So it talks about Mary wiping His feet. That's a little teaser for what's going to happen in chapter 12. So here in the first 2 verses, we see there's 3 siblings. Okay? 3 adult siblings living in a town named Bethany. And this was Jesus' posse. This was his crew. This was his friend group. I mean, Jesus was a single man. He didn't have a family of his own. So this was his extended family. So he would go over. We read about this in Luke chapter 10. They hung out together at these guys' house. I mean, they would stay up. They would eat meals. They would talk late into the night. They'd play pinochle. This was his group. Was his crew. And now his posse, we read here, has a pressing need. Lazarus is fighting for his life. He gets the call. Lazarus is sick. Really, really sick. In verse 3 says this. So the sisters sent to him, saying, Lord, he whom you love is ill. But when Jesus heard it, he said, this illness does not lead to death. It is for the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister Mary and Lazarus. So when he heard that Lazarus was ill, he ran to the rescue. Is that what the text says? He loved these guys very deeply, very much. So when he heard that Lazarus was ill, very curious statement, he stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was. What in the world? I mean, he loves these guys, and yet he's going to stay? He's just going to linger back? He's going to just dilly-dally in their moment of need? He's about to die, and he's just going to stay right where he's at? I mean, if anybody could help, it was Jesus. And he knew it, they knew it, and yet he stays right where he's at. This is kind of like calling 911. And for them to say, okay, we'll see you in a couple days. Close for the weekend. Be back in the office Monday. The only avenue of help I've got, Jesus. And yet he stays 2 days longer. Didn't turn on the sirens, didn't even get in the car. He stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was at. Why? That's the optimal question in this whole passage. Why would God linger? Why would Jesus just stay? Why would he stall this whole operation? They have a pressing need. He loves them. They know he loves them. And yet he stays right where he's at. Why? Our answer here is found in verse 4. We read it. He said it. This illness does not lead to death. It is for the glory of God. This situation is not going to lead to death. It's going to lead to the glory of God. I want you to hear the confidence in that statement. He knows he's not only all-powerful, he's all-knowing. He knows the end from the beginning. He knows the whole picture. And I want you to hear the confidence in Jesus. Think about the situation that you might be stuck in today. Why are you there? Why are you stuck in the situation? Maybe it's a crisis. And you've called out to Jesus, and he's not acting. He's not speaking. He's not doing anything. He's lingering in the place. Why? Because I believe his confidence is bigger than your crisis. Whatever crisis that you might be in today, Jesus knows the beginning from the end. And he has confidence. In his confidence, no matter how big your crisis may seem today, his confidence is bigger, more absolute, more enduring. This is the all-knowing omniscience of God. And when he's not acting, you should interpret the silence as confidence, because you know he loves you. He loved these guys and did nothing, because he knew what was going to happen. So when you face the silence today, please know it's not because he does not care. Please know that it's not that he does not know. He knows, he cares, but he's confident. And this requires trust. Trust that he has a plan. He knows what he's trying to accomplish. He knows the beginning from the end, and he doesn't ever get in a hurry. Have you noticed that about God? He doesn't really consider pain. He doesn't really consider time. He just allows the thing to play out in his good time. Jesus never got in a hurry because he was confident. So he purposely held out on his friends. Does God hold out on you? You better believe he does. He holds out on you because he's holding out for something better. Oh, he can answer your prayer. He just knows your prayer is probably too small. He has something bigger in mind, greater in mind. Oh, God, give me this job. This is my dream job. This would work so perfectly with my life. The pay is good. It's an opportunity I've never had before. I don't know if I'll have this opportunity ever again. Oh, God, give me that house. Give me a spouse. Give me a partner. Give me a ministry. Oh, that ministry would be so awesome, Lord. Could he have something greater in mind? Sometimes he holds out on you, and he doesn't give you what you want in the time that you want it, because he has something greater in store. So he holds out on us, and the process can be painful, right? Why am I still not married? Why are we still without children? Why haven't I received that promotion? And then if enough time goes by, our hopes begin to wane. Our hopes begin to extinguish. And quite honestly, our hopes begin to die. You know, Jesus waited until what they feared the most had happened. They were all in a panic. He was close to death. They were sending for help. And Jesus stays right where he's at. And the worst happened. Look at verse 7. Then after this, he said to the disciples, "Let us go to Judea again." The disciples said to him, "Rabbi, the Jews were just now seeking to stone you." This is chapter 10, verse 31. He's claiming to be God. They didn't like that, so they were trying to stone him. He got out of there. They were just trying to stone you, and are you going back there again? And Jesus answered, "Are there not 12 hours in the day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble because he sees the light of this world. But if anyone walks in the night, he stumbles because the light is not in him." After saying these things, he said to them, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I go to awaken him." The disciples said to him, "Lord, if he has fallen asleep, he will recover." Now Jesus had spoken of his death, But they thought that he meant taking a rest and sleep. Then Jesus told them plainly, Lazarus has died. And for your sake, I am glad that I was not there, so that you may believe, but let us go to him. So Thomas, called the twin, said to his fellow disciples, we're going to die. He tries to put a brave face on it and says, let us go that we may die with him. They honestly think this is the end. I mean, they already have a dead Lazarus. They don't need a dead Jesus too. And so they make the journey back to Jerusalem. But what I want to point out here is that Jesus waited until what they feared the most had happened. So does God wait until it's too late? Yes. In human terms, he does wait until it's too late. Lazarus is dead. The dreadful thing has happened, and Jesus did nothing to stop it. You know it requires trust. This whole thing, how do you deal with the wait? It requires trust. And you know it requires trust when his best ideal includes your worst ideal. That's the very thing they didn't want to happen. And that's the very thing Jesus allowed to happen. So now, we got to turn our attention how to cope with the loss. So how do you deal with the wait? You got to trust. Trust that he has a plan. He knows what he's doing. He knows the beginning from the end. And even if he allows the worst possible thing to happen, he's confident. And in order to get through that, you got to trust. One of my favorite verses in all the Bible is trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not to your own understanding. You're not going to get it. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he will direct your path. It's the only way through. You got to trust. So now we turn to how do you cope with a loss? Sometimes life brings losses. How do you cope with it? You turn off your alarm on your phone. So when Jesus has you on personal lockdown, how do you cope? How do you cope? How do you cope with a loss? And we find there is many different ways of doing this. And in the passage today, we're going to see two distinct ways of doing this, because we're going to see two sisters who cope with the loss of their brother very differently. And these two sisters, named Martha and Mary, are polar opposites. We see a great description of the personality here, and then in Luke chapter 10. And so if you look at both of those places, Luke 10 and John 11, you see very distinct personalities in either of these ladies. Martha's favorite room in the house was anybody know? Kitchen. She's always up on her feet. She's serving, she's helping, she's always active, always serving, always doing. And Mary's favorite room in the house would probably be the living room, where she's sitting down, spending time with people. She's reflective. She's thoughtful. Martha's style is direct and in your face. And Mary just wanted to smell the flowers. I mean, that was her demeanor. She was very soft. Martha was very direct. And you can imagine they probably coped with loss a lot differently than each other. So let's look first at Martha, how she deals with the loss of her brother. Verse 17. Now when Jesus came, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb 4 days. Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles off, and many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them concerning the brother. So, when Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went and met him, but Mary remained seated in the house. Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if you would have been here, my brother would not have died." Now, the text doesn't come with tone, but you can certainly know from her personality and kind of just from the flavor of what's happening here that she's angry. So her tone is anger and accusation. Her finger is stuck in the chest of Jesus and said, "Lord, if you would have been here, my brother would not have died." So you can just imagine what they've been through for this last week. So they call for help because they're desperate. When you get on the line to 911, I mean, something's happening. You need some help, like right now. So they call for help. No Jesus. Lazarus died. No Jesus. They have the funeral, the memorial service. They bury him in a tomb. No Jesus. And then surely you would think, just out of courtesy, you love us, don't you, Jesus? He would show up maybe like the day after. So day 1, he's in the tomb, come and gone. Day 2, come and gone. Day 3, come and gone. Day 4, and here comes Jesus. You can imagine, knowing what we know of Martha, she was incensed. She was just hot. Anger, accusation. "Lord, if you would have been here, my brother would not have died." But even now, I know that whatever you ask from God, God will give you. And Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day. Jesus said to her, in some of the best words you'll find in the Bible, "I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And everyone who believes in me, whoever lives and believes in me shall never die." Do you believe this? She said to him, "Yes, Lord. I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who is coming into the world." Look at the way Martha interacts with Jesus. This is this is an intellectual engagement. I mean, she's operating from the head. If she's the head, Mary's the heart. She does this completely different. But Martha, she's very cerebral. She's very maybe cold and calculating. She's engaging Jesus on a very intellectual level. And in here, in John 11 and Luke 10, we don't necessarily see that Martha was ever rebuked for the way she handled things. And in fact, she drew something out of Jesus that was very distinct than from what Mary drew out of Jesus. So she came at him from a mind level and really got an intellectual response, which was a beautiful, rich, theological statement that we hold on to today. She produced one of the greatest verses in the Bible. I am the resurrection. I don't come just to revive your hopes. I am your hope. I'm not just coming to bring hope. I am hope. I'm not just bringing resurrection. I am resurrection. I am life. I am your confidence. She brought that out of Jesus. So I want us to know that there are many ways of dealing with loss, coping with loss. This is one of the ways. But she engaged Jesus. She didn't stay back. She didn't stay in her own place. She came and she talked. And that's that's the thing I want us all to see. There's many ways to do it, but there's only one really way to do it, and that's to talk to Jesus. So if Martha is a thinker, certainly Mary is a feeler. Look at verse 28. When Martha had said this, she went and called to her sister, Mary, saying in private, "The teacher is here and is calling for you." And when Mary heard it, she rose quickly, went to meet him. And now Jesus had not yet come into the village, but was still in the place where Martha had been. And when the Jews who were with her in the house, consoling her, saw Mary rise quickly and go out, they followed her, supposing that she was going up to the tomb to weep there. Now when Mary came to where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet, saying to him the very same words that Martha said to him. "Lord, if you would have been here, my brother would not have died." And when Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come with her also weeping, he was deeply moved. And in his spirit, he was deeply moved in his spirit and greatly troubled. And he said, "Where have you laid him?" They said to him, "Lord, come and see." Jesus wept. So the Jews said, "See how he loved him?" But some of them said, Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man also keep this man from dying? So I hope you see here that there is two different ways, at least presented in this text, to cope with loss. One is out of anger and accusation. And sometimes we come before God and we blame him. And we tell him how we feel, and it's raw and it's ugly. But he receives that. He doesn't turn the Marthas away. And then there's other ways of engaging him. That it's interesting. Martha got up in his face. Mary fell right down at his feet. One was confrontive. One was submissive. And Mary, oh, Mary. I think sometimes we got to ask, who am I? It's okay, whatever you are, however you come to Jesus, as long as you come, give it all, lay it all out there, and he can handle it. I think both ways are valid. Both ways of coping with loss. And I love it. Martha brought out this like the intellect of Jesus, but Mary, he brought out the heart. There were no tears with Martha. It was a tearless face and a boneless finger. A bony finger, boneless. Bony finger. But with Mary, oh man, there was soft humility, tears, and that's what she brought out of Jesus. Jesus wept. Show me where he's laying. And he's walking with the people, weeping with the people. And I think this should always give us confidence to know that when you're really going through something, Jesus is going through it too. The text says he was greatly troubled. When you're greatly troubled, Jesus is right there with you. And he feels the pain. He feels the emotion. And isn't it ministry? I think it's called the ministry of presence. When somebody's there, not to try to just fix it, but to listen and to feel and to cry. When you weep, what kind of ministry would it be for somebody to sit right there and weep with you? Wow. And that's what Jesus does. That's what Jesus does. He's compassionate. Compassion means passion means suffering. Somebody's suffering with you. And that's what Jesus does. And there's nothing more healing than that. But this story would be pretty bleak if it stopped there. Okay, so how do you deal with the weight? Okay, you trust. How do you cope with the loss? You talk. But there's more. When Jesus has you on personal lockdown, how do you let him do his thing? Because he's trying to accomplish something in your life. How do you let him do it? Letting Jesus do his thing. Let's read verse 38. Then Jesus, deeply moved again, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone lay against it. And Jesus said, "Take away the stone." Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, "Lord, by this time there will be an odor, for he has been dead for 4 days." I mean, the decomposing body, I guess, produces just a terrific smell. The King James Version says, "He stinketh." I mean, there is, whoo! I mean, and so Martha is appalled. You want me? I know you're able to do all kinds of things, but that's a little much, don't you think? I mean, she's appalled because dignity and decency were primary on her mind. But listen, if you're going to let Jesus do his thing, sometimes you're going to have to put your dignity on the shelf. Sometimes you're going to let the stink and the smell and the shame and the things that are there that have just been, you've covered it over for so long, you're going to have to let that the stone to be removed and something in your life to be exposed that you would rather not other people to see and to engage in. Take away the stone. Sometimes the stone is dignity. No one is going to embarrass me. Sometimes the stone is privacy. No one is going to go there in my life. And sometimes the stone is just protection. No one's going to hurt me ever again. That is a sacred place, and no one is going to see it. No one is going to hear it. And I'm not going to expose it to the world. And for encouragement, I want you to hear the words of Jesus. Verse 40, if you feel like there is a stone covering an area in your life that Jesus is calling to get at, I want you to hear this verse as an encouragement to you. Jesus said to her, Jesus says to you, did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God. Did I not say that? Did I not tell you? Do you not trust me? Do you not believe I am who I am? If you believe, you will see the glory of God. So they took away the stone. Martha let it happen. And Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this on account of the people standing around, that they may know, that they may believe that you sent me into the world. And when he had said these things, he cried out with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. And the man who had died came out, his hands and his feet bound with linen strips, and his face wrapped with a cloth. And Jesus said to them, Unbind the man and let him go. Jesus. Never forget who we're dealing with. Jesus. The thing I want us to take courage in this morning is that we're dealing with a God who is able. He is able to do exceedingly, abundantly, above all that you ask or think. And I don't know about you, but I can ask a lot and I can think a lot. And yet he can do greater than that. He's able. Does he always do it? He might not. Perhaps your prayer is too small. Maybe he's going for something greater, something larger, more effective in your life. He's not only all-powerful, but he's all-wise. And he's all-loving. And he knows the beginning from the end. He knows what he's trying to accomplish, and if we will trust him. That's what this passage is calling us to do. How do we deal with the weight? And sometimes God has you in a holding pattern. How are you to deal with that? Trust him. Trust him. He's able. He can do anything he wants. Place your trust in Jesus. How do you cope with the loss? Sometimes there's tragedy that strikes. There's things that you suffer loss. Sometimes the very things that you never wanted to lose, you will sometimes lose, but only know that it's temporary, it's temporary, it's temporary. In the light of eternity, this is a small affliction, although right now it seems like it's huge. How do you cope with the loss? Talk to Jesus. Have it all out if you need to. Scream and shout, accuse, blame. He can take it. Maybe you're in his face, but maybe you just drop to his feet. You've had enough. You've reached the end of the rope. I've got to reach the point of surrender, and you just fall and weep in a pile of tears. He'll invite that. Talk to him. Engage with him. He welcomes it on all levels. And how do we let Jesus do his thing? We need to take away the stones. What stone is Jesus asking for you to roll away? He's not able to call forth the Lazaruses of your life if you insist that that stone remain untouched. We need to allow Jesus to do his thing. This is called dying to live. Many people in the world is just living to die. I'm just living life. But Jesus calls us to something very different, and that's dying to live. Sometimes we need to allow our greatest hopes, our greatest aspirations and dreams to go ahead and die so that he can call them forth to a new life. It's called resurrection. Jesus says, I am the resurrection and life. We're going to end with one last song. I call the music team back up. And this last song is a song I've been having on my heart for the last, maybe 3-4 months. I hope you listen to the lyrics. Actually, I'm going to read them to you. And as we stand to sing, let this be your prayer. No matter the pain, no matter the difficulty, no matter the trial, it might be painful. It might be something you've never experienced before. Let him do the work. He's trying to accomplish something profound and lasting. And you're going to love the result. Do you think Martha and Mary loved the result of this? Oh, you better believe it. Wow! You're going to love it too. This song is called New Wine. And let me read you the lyrics. It says, in the crushing, in the pressing, you are making new wine. In the soil I now surrender, you are breaking new ground. So I yield to you and to your careful hand. When I trust you, I don't need to understand. Make me your vessel. Make me your offering. Make me whatever you want me to be. I came here with nothing but all that you have given me. Jesus, bring new wine out of me. God, that's our prayer. You want to do something in our life. And anything worth doing has never been easy. Help us embrace the work, oh God. Help us to recognize your hand, and when it hurts, help us to submit. Help us to trust. Help us to talk. Help us to remove the stones that lay over our grave, so as something new will come from it. We submit to your hand. Have your way, we pray. Let's go ahead and stand. Let's go ahead and sing. Sing out.